Alrighty, folks, today we are going to be talking impulse control. More often than not, I have found one of the things that can sabotage a diet, sabotage training goals for the year is being too impulsive. So we're going to go over some of the key features of that and how I like to combat that. So if you're interested in that and anything else, mental performance, bodybuilding psychology related, hit subscribe and let's get to the episode. So understanding impulses is sort of a two-part thing. What are you sort of compelled to do, and what was the trigger that sort of caused you to be impulsive in that scenario? So to rehash, impulses are these sudden urges to act on a particular feeling or sensation. And these can be triggered by emotional or environmental triggers. So it might be triggered by low mood, it might be triggered by worry, it might be triggered by any number of emotions, or it could be environmental. Now, from sort of a clinical perspective, stepping out of sort of that bodybuilding mindset, triggers for something like, let's just say, substance use. If you are a person drinks alcohol and is trying to quit, a trigger for them might be literally, driving by a particular gas station on the way home from work. On the way home from work, they go and they pick up a six-pack, they come home, they drink. That's sort of an environmental trigger. Or, Fridays after work, getting into their car, driving by a particular bar that they go and attend frequently. That is an environmental trigger. In the context of fitness and things like that, an environmental trigger might be the food you keep in your cabinets. It might be the food that is at a particular eyesight level in your fridge. It could be any number of things that you see in your house or in your work environment or in your school environment on a day-to-day basis. So those are some of your environmental triggers. Now for you, common triggers might include, so sort of tying this back into our fitness bodybuilding type lifestyle, you might have social situations that are triggers. You might have stress. Stress is a very big trigger for people to overeat sometimes. Stress is also a big trigger for people to skip workouts or just sort of put that aside. If you have a stressful day at work, if you have a stressful day with your girlfriend, spouse, whatever, that might trigger some behaviors, some coping behaviors that in the moment acutely are going to make you feel better and help you manage some of the feelings that come along with those stressful situations. However, they are going to work against sort of our long-term goals. The last sort of trigger that might impact you, something like boredom. If you are doing any kind of dieting, or if you have any extra spare time on your hands, you get bored in the evenings. Boredom, more often than not, maybe not more often than not, but sometimes leads to overeating, grazing, doing things that just don't align what we want, again, in the long term. What are some techniques we can use to, number one, identify whenever we are feeling impulsive, and then number two, reorient and direct ourselves more towards things that are aligned with our values? Number one, you are going to want to learn to label your thoughts and acknowledge and notice them as sort of passing events and not things that you are identified with and have to listen to. So I think a lot of the time whenever we have thoughts, it is almost in this unconscious state. And by identifying, saying something like, okay, I'm having a thought that I want a bag of chips. I'm having a thought that I want to eat the whole bag of chips. Now that may sound funny, but it allows you to sort of de-identify from said thought and create a little bit of space. We'll talk more about space here in a minute. Number two thing that you can do to sort of mindfully observe these thoughts, the sort of real, sort of actionable thing that you can take from here is with the acronym STOP. So what does STOP stand for? Slow down. S in this acronym is going to stand for slow down. I think that we, acting on impulse is very quick, it's very fast. So the first thing you want to do is slow down. So remember, whenever you have the urge to do something, pause for a second, slow down. The next thing you're going to want to do is create even more space and take a deep breath. Maybe take 5 to 10 deep breaths. Stop, take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. The more of those deep breaths you can take, the more space you create between stimulus and response. So slow down, take a deep breath. The next thing you're going to want to do, back up to that first trick I taught you, is observe. You're going to want to observe that thought. Here, you can say things like, all right, I'm noticing that I'm having a thought that I want to eat this whole bag of chips. And to create even more distance, you can say things like, I'm noticing that my mind is having the thought that I want to eat this whole bag of chips. This sounds odd, but again, In life, in terms of how we respond to stimulus, it is one big game of stimulus and response, right? That's all it is. Uh, our triggers are the stimulus, and we sometimes respond to those triggers in an unconscious way. Number one, we're trying to make things more conscious. And then number two, we are trying to make enough space between our decision making and said stimuli so that we can make more effective decisions. So, by sort of observing our thoughts, by labeling them, by using the particular language that creates even more space, we can then make more effective decisions and stop acting on impulse. So, observing your thoughts and labeling your thoughts sounds a little bit funny, but it is necessary to create that space. That's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to create space. And P, proceed in a valued direction. So, slow down, take a deep breath, observe your thoughts, proceed in a valued direction. Once you've taken all that time to slow down, once you've taken all that time to create some space, then you need something else to do. You can't just have someone stop a particular behavior without trying to replace it with something that is more adaptive, something that is going to be more aligned with their values. So you have to sort of figure out what direction you want to go in, which brings me to my last point, creating an action plan for high-risk scenarios. So if you are the type of person who has a very stressful job and you come home and coming home and seeing chips is a trigger for you, let's just say stress precipitated all that. So stress really here is the trigger for you to eat a lot of junk food and you don't want to be eating a lot of junk food. We need to have a plan for that. Sort of like if we wanted to begin going to the gym and we sort of set out our clothes the night before to sort of trigger that immediate response of, oh, okay, I'm going to put on my clothes and then I'm going to go to the gym first thing in the morning. We want to do the same thing for sort of high-risk situations. If your high-risk situation, again, is immediately after work because you have a very stressful job, you want to pre-plan out, let's say, maybe a snack or something. So instead of eating an entire bag of chips, you have a bag of apples along with, some whole grain toast and maybe a protein bar or something like that. And then that will serve to, one, that's probably going to be more satiating in the long run. Number two, it's probably going to have infinitely more protein. And number three, it's going to have way less calories so that if you have any particular diet or fitness goals, you are going to be able to maintain those things. Another problematic situation is when friends ask you to do things. This is more often than not something that I run into. And so having sort of canned responses to situations in which you commonly encounter in your social life are going to be helpful. Now, with peer pressure, you may have to develop some polite refusals. No, thank you, I'm not drinking right now. Or no, thank you, ate before I came. Or no, thank you, doing a bit of dieting right now. Different polite responses so that you can combat the urge to sort of cave to social niceties. Now, there is a time and place for social niceties. There's a time and place to sort of freestyle and eat with your colleagues or eat with your friends. But if you have particular goals in mind and shoot, if you don't mind sharing those particular goals, like, hey, you know what, I'm dieting for the next, 12 weeks, so can't really partake. I really appreciate it. Most people, most good-natured people aren't going to really push you to do anything beyond that. Just developing a short one-sentence response that you can repeat over and over and over again in those scenarios is going to be helpful because it's not going to take a lot of brain power. You're going to reduce sort of the stress of certain situations by having this canned response. Last thing here, last actionable tip. What habits can we adopt to help with sort of impulse control? Like I said earlier in the video, if between stimulus and response there is space, and we want to take advantage and leverage that space, create more of that space so that we can make better decisions. There are particular things that we could do to help us identify that space and take advantage of it. And one of those things is mindfulness. So the mindfulness I'm talking about, 3 to 5 minutes, a couple times a day. Check out a couple of other videos on the channel that will help sort of develop your own mindfulness routine. But essentially, mindfulness is non-judgmental present moment awareness. I highly recommend just observing your breathing and allowing thoughts to come and to go as you practice observing your breathing. So what you want to do is you want to pay attention to your breath in and out. And you want to do that for 3 to 5 minutes. You want to follow your breath in and out. And then any thoughts that come up, you just want to notice them, allow them to be there for as long as they need to be there, and then sort of to sort of bring in a metaphor here, just sort of watch them flow along a stream and then bring your attention back to your breath. And that is a nice way to practice some mindful breathing. You're paying attention to your breath. You're allowing thoughts to come and go. And by doing it a couple times a day for multiple days a week, sort of like strength training, you are developing that mental muscle. And this mental muscle is going to allow you to leverage that space between stimulus and response by responding in a more effective and adaptive way. Alrighty, folks, that is it for this episode. Do not let your impulses derail your fitness and or dieting goals. Hope this episode was helpful. If you are interested in this or any other bodybuilding, psychology related things, check out some of the other episodes in the channel. If you have any comments, please shoot them down below, subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a great week. Peace.